What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Up and Knitted. I'm your host, Adrian Babashoff, and if you're new here, welcome as well. And if you're wondering what the show is about, it's entirely dedicated to creating an alternative lifestyle design that improves quality of life for both people and for the planet, exploring alternatives to the daily grind through liberation and independence, moving you from surviving to thriving and living life raw, the way it's meant to be. This is episode 114, the significance of biodegradable container gardening. For those of you watching, I'm at the beach here in San Diego. I'm not sure if you can see in the background. I thought I'd give you guys a little background thing here, but it looks pretty white in there. So for those of you watching the show on YouTube, hopefully you can see that. I'm at the beach because it always puts me in a good mood. But yeah, I wanted to skim over. This is episode 114 and 113 and 112. We wanted to get you guys started with gardening, and we're trying to, if this is your first time tuning in here, you might want to go back to those. And we're just doing a step-by-step series here of what you can do to get yourself growing some food, especially in these strange times. I think it's for alternative lifestyle design is what we preach, what we practice, and what we live by here. And I think growing your own food is a huge part of it. But we've got something completely significantly different that's I believe it's ever been seen. I haven't seen anything out there. The biodegradable container gardening system is what I want to jump into, because in episode 113 and 112 we kind of gave you guys a basis of like how to do some stuff, to get the groundwork done. But this is actually something that I've invented and something that I'm practicing, and it's 100% biodegradable. It improves the quality of soil that you have existing in ground soil. It will start perfecting this stuff, or if you do want to move from container gardening into gardening, there's no way that you're going to lose out. It's going to leave it better than when you found it. It's in complete harmony with nature. I'm going to talk about that today. No more fighting with pests and stuff, with most pests. And I do put that in capitalized letter in the show notes. Most pests, I'm sorry. And it lets you do more. Whether you're by yourself or you're in a group, like a community or a giant group effort, it's saving you time. We're trying to slick life here. We're trying to streamline stuff and get more done, or just maybe have things so streamlined that you have more time to nap or to meditate or to do whatever it is that you please. Whether you're fast-paced life or you just taking it easy, why not take it even easier? And what better thing, though, than the biodegradable container gardening that actually helps the environment, that makes the soil even better. So with that, we're going to jump in. So I want to start with the piece with most pests. We are at war constantly. I go to the forums on Facebook and I talk to people. In fact, the Spin Farm project, for those of you guys who don't know, I'm farming on somebody else's property. They own the land, but I own my soil, and they're allowing me to garden right along with them. So they have a garden next to me, and they're constantly killing squirrels. They're constantly killing gophers, moles. Now we have mice infiltrating, and there's just a huge problem. There's ants, and there's pincher bugs, and there's slugs and snails. We got all of these things happening, and with the systems that I've designed, I'm watching that I've got zero problems with these sort of pests. All these ground pests, we've got nothing, absolutely nothing. And it's such a beautiful thing to be gardening and growing my own food for the ease of it, but to watch nature on the ground, not having to be disturbed, not having to go to war with. There's no fight whatsoever. Everything's just left alone. And I think that's probably one of my biggest selling points I didn't really realize for myself, is like it feels good not to have to kill stuff. Unfortunately, I built fortunately, I built an in-ground system with the biodegradable container gardening, which we're gonna get into today to show you how to build, or not show you how to build, but we're just giving you. Today we're just like skimming. I want to wet your whistle. I want to give you the significance of all this to see if people get excited, to see how many views it gets, how many downloads and listens, to see if this is something that I should continue with. If not, I'll drop off and go to another subject. But yeah, it's just beautiful to not have to deal with the slugs and everybody and to leave them alone. So we dealt with the ground pests, but now we have airborne. And that's my problem I have right now is even though my system is covered inside of a greenhouse. The sides are open, and it's susceptible to things like aphids and cabbage moths and things like that. So we are being infiltrated with these things, but with simple sprays of like neem oil and a couple different things, natural things that we've got going on. I mentioned in the previous show that one of my ideas is to ground up say tomato leaves, make a juice out of them, filter it all out, put it in a spray bottle, and spray such things as my arugula and my spinach and my lettuce, where the cabbage moths are coming in and just annihilating my plants. So if I take the scent of the tomato bush and spray that on plants, which is completely free, it's foliage, it's stuff I'm cutting off of pruning my tomatoes anyways, it'll give that smell to these flying insects, and they won't want to land and eat my foods. And it's completely biodegradable and natural, no chemicals whatsoever. So I'm really excited about that. There's the power of observation, as I said in episode 113. There's also on your tomatoes, you're going to get tomato worms. Well, we noticed that there's no tomato worms on, say, something like basil. And basil has a very strong aroma. What if we grew some basil and we did the same thing? We pulverized it in the blender, strained all the water out, and sprayed that on our tomatoes. Would that stop the moths from actually coming in and laying their eggs with their larvae on it? We're going to have to try that out. The other thing is kind of exciting is that I've heard if you grow, a little tip here, if you grow your tomatoes and you plant a little basil bush inside, the roots will actually mingle, and they like each other, they're compatible. You'll get actually a hint of basil flavor inside your tomato. I'm wondering if we use this as a foliage spray, meaning we spray the leaves and the stems and everything to keep the bugs off, if it wouldn't absorb some of that in flavor into the tomatoes. If you can imagine a beefsteak tomato infused with just a slight hint of basil. That sounds magnificent. So yeah, our airborne insects are there. We want to keep the bees going and everything coming in and out, and those are good stuff. We have bad stuff, we have good stuff, and as long as we mitigate that with a spray, which I try to do once a week, every Monday, I go in with a stuff called Spinosad, and I come in with a thing called neem oil. They're both organic, certified. OMRI certified. And if you do this once a week, every Monday, I try to do that, everything on a set schedule. Then we don't really have to worry about them too much. And I haven't seen it hurting the bees or anything. And we're having great success. One way that you can is you can wrap this stuff called agricultural cloth. And it's basically like pantyhose, like a thin screen material that goes off, that lets the light in, lets the heat out, lets a little bit of airflow, not much, but it'll keep, if you enclose this thing like a giant Ziploc bag, you would not have aphids, you wouldn't have as many problems as you would leaving it out all to the open. So it is possible to automate and to kind of get that going. So one of the beautiful things I do want to say, though, and it felt like an honor to me, was that in my garden I'm growing with burlap sacks with jute, right? Hence the biodegradable container gardening. It's 100% natural. Well, in these natural fibers, these strings are all hanging out the sides of these baskets, and I noticed hummingbirds and birds coming and picking the strings out and taking them for their nests. And I just thought that was so humbling, and so, like I said, I'm honored to see nature providing that for them. Like they love the environment. So beautiful stuff, guys, beautiful stuff. Weeds, I spoke in the episode, I think it was 113, about time. All the time and effort you got to put into stuff. I've studied books under spin farming projects, people who are farming like a half an acre, a quarter of an acre, and the biggest time consumptions were watering, but the biggest thing in gardening is weeding. And in my systems, you're developing your own soil with worm castings and vermiculite and peat moss or coconut coir, whichever any kind of system you want, whichever your preference is. But we're starting out fresh, and we have relatively very few seeds. If you took yourself a cup of dirt and any place of the planet, basically what you have is a bank, like a money bank, but this is a seed bank. And you have seeds that could lay dormant for years, if not even decades. These things are just waiting to pop out. So that's the problem. I think it does take years. In my observation, with people doing farming just in the ground, tilling the earth and everything, they stay on top of it. It takes about 3 to 5 to maybe sometimes even 10 years of just constant weeding, keeping up on it, putting all those long hours to where they finally eradicate all the bank is depleted. And now they don't have as many seeds as they used to, so hence less work. But with my systems here, just starting off, that eliminates it right off the bat. So the other thing that the biodegradable container gardening has for it is the soil pH. It's completely manipulable. For those of you who don't know, the pH balance is the alkaline and the acidic. We have this in our bodies. I think it's very, very fascinating that the optimal, we'll start with the gardening, the most optimal soil pH from acid to alkaline is 6.5 to 7 to 7.2 is what they're saying. So basically what we have is the acid levels and stuff rising, or maybe the alkaline rising. And what happens if we're not kind of on this certain area of the scale, which is 6.5 to 7.2 in my opinion, you start losing things like magnesium and everything. You should look that up. It's kind of hard to explain in a podcast, but you basically have like copper, manganese, phosphorus, all these different things that that your plants need. And when the soil is more acidic or alkaline, it gives some, it robs from some and takes from the other. It's like you lose and you win. So the most optimum spot, if you can see like a hairline line, is to go from 6.5 to 7.2, and that kind of, you lose some things, but you're still getting it, and you're gaining more on others. So sometimes when you grow such things as like blueberries, they like more acidic soil. So you can lean that more to like say 7.5 to maybe 8. You can use such things as pine needles or whatever you can. But the point I want to make with the soil is that it's pretty much pH neutral, meaning that it comes already 6.5 to 7 to 7.2. So things do relatively well very quickly. Sometimes depending on the soil of what you're mixing, it may take about a year to age to where it gets to its optimal, it kind of has to break down like wine. But yeah, you can totally make adjustments, and you can read these things, and you don't have to mix your soils like say a big giant bed just to do blueberries. You can actually isolate this down to one container, and you can get a soil pH meter if you like. I don't know how reliable they are. I think I'm leaning more towards soil testing. But yeah, you can manipulate this area and keep this soil in line for all your acid loving plants, and then keep a separate pile of soil that's going to go for your alkaline, for your low acidic loving plants. Soil nutrients is the other one I'd like to mention, is that I think this is one of our biggest problems with like blossom end rot with tomatoes. When the bottom starts to it gets all mushy, all your fruits start to rot. I think that it's a watering thing possibly, but I think it could also be nutrients. And you can tell as far as like my experiments that I'm doing right now on my project, we're growing such things as tomatoes, which is a significant, a good experiment because they're heavy feeders, meaning they need lots of nutrients. So when you put a tomato bush in say a 5-gallon bucket, it'll suck up all the manganese and zinc and copper and all that kind of stuff very, very quickly, all the calcium. So it's a very hungry plant. So it's a perfect candidate to experiment in different size baskets. Right now we have them in 5. We have them in a 7.5 gallon. And we're also just recently, in fact, yesterday we did a 10-gallon. And we're going to do the side-by-side comparison to see how well they do. You can check this out on videos right now. We're not publishing a hell of a lot yet, other than on Instagram. And it's the BC Gardening Guy. That's B as in boy, C as in cat, Gardening Guy. And we'll be posting that soon here, so keep an eye out for that. But what I do want to mention, what I'm seeing so far in an earlier experiment I did with tomatoes, is in a 5-gallon container, we're getting some yellowing. And I took 2 tomatoes, the exact same species, exact same size, put them side by side. We have a 5-gallon, we have a 7.5. The 7.5 one is just this nice, luscious, rich green. The one in the 5-gallon now seems like it's depleted its nutrients, and it's actually kind of yellowing. It's like a light lime green. I just added a whole bunch of compost to it and some worm castings to see how well, if it'll green back up. So we're going to be following that to see. But yeah, as far as your nutrients and your soil, it's really nice to know how much you got. Again, you can do this through soil testing, where you plant, maybe mix up your soil before, send us a sample out, or take it or read it yourself, find out what the pH and all the nutrient levels are, and then when you're done, say, growing a tomato, you can take the nutrients after that and see what was depleted, and that can kind of tell you, ooh, I need more of this, or I need more of that. So it's very mathematically predictable. It could be manipulated, and it's a wonderful thing. So I talked about soil testing already. I'm going to send in some stuff out to a company, and I'm going to share those results with you guys here probably in the next week or so. So, biodegradable container gardening overview. You guys probably want to know exactly what this thing is. So basically, you know, I've been doing the sip beds, the wicking beds, aquaponics. I've built systems, all kinds of different hugelkultur, permaculture stuff, wood core beds, all kinds of different things. And I finally found the biodegradable container gardening. Really funny. It actually happened when I was partying a little bit too late. I was very low sleep and hungover, and I came up with the concept just sitting there one morning, and I went, oh, it just snapped. And what snapped was the burlap, the jute plant, which we're going to talk about here in a second. And I needed a way to, I scrubbed through YouTube, I scrubbed through blogs and stuff to find out, well, how are people doing it? How do you keep the bags from rotting? Everything biodegradable biodegrades. And the thing that a lot of people didn't say on the YouTube videos, except for one I saw where they went to pick up, they grew potatoes in a gunny sack, in a jute burlap sack. And they showed it no problem. When they picked it up, the bottom was rotted out, and they just kind of had to pick up their soil and kind of move it around. So I looked and I went, well, that just sounds like a pain in the ass. I mean, oh, that's right. This is a potty mouth podcast, by the way. The F-bomb might come in at some point, so please be aware of that, not for angel ears. But yeah, so I sat there and I said, well, how can I, what can I do to mitigate this so that we don't have this problem where I want to pick up my soil? I don't want to lose it. I want to just dump off. Again, we said that the soil underneath is a seed bank. We want to keep that separate so we don't have to do all the weeding. So what we came up with, me and all the monkeys in my head, was galvanized steel. Galvanized steel is regular old steel treated with hot zinc. It's a rust inhibitor. That's what keeps the steel from rusting out. So galvanized steel, that's all it is, I guess, is zinc. So what happens when zinc starts to corrode, it gets wet, it lets off a minuscule amount of zinc, which is good for the soil anyways, and good for us. And it does biodegrade down, and those are the things I trust. I want stuff that's going to eventually rot, something that's going to last forever. I just kind of, I don't know, I don't think it's good for our environment. I don't think it's good for us. Lessons from nature. Everything in nature is born, it dies, it decomposes, it gives birth, it gives seed, it looks beautiful, and then it shrivels up. That's what we need. We need change. We need these things to happen, and that's how we're going to get out of this hole that we're in with our environment and with ourselves. Like, we need to start looking at nature and figuring out if we are going to manipulate it, if we are going to mimic it, we need to understand its laws and its ways to figure this out. So that's why I'm super excited. So getting back on the baskets is I basically been formatting my own. I've been manufacturing my own baskets made out of galvanized steel wire, and we form these 1 foot square baskets, and we line them with the jute plant with burlap. Let's talk about burlap for a while now. I got you guys the baskets and everything. These things could be put directly on the ground, or the baskets could be hung. We're going to get into that, but let's get into some of these things about burlap, aka jute plant. The jute plant is actually it's completely resistant to pests. It's an amazing plant. When I found this out, it just seems like this gardening thing that I've invented just keeps getting better and better. So check this out, guys. It has really no pest, nothing that attacks it whatsoever. So it doesn't need pesticides. It doesn't even need any fertilizers at all. All right? Isn't that crazy? It uses much less water than cotton. So it does take water, but it can't just take any water. It relies off of rainwater. If you start irrigating it with regular, like from a well or something like that, it won't do very well. In fact, I think in some cases it might die. It's very cheap to grow because we don't need fertilizers, we don't need pesticides, we don't need anything really, just but the seeds. It was considered a wonder crop at one time, making probably the making rope and everything out of it. I think it's still a wonder crop. So it's found in China, India, Nepal, Thailand, Bangladesh, and in Burma. So it's located only in a few parts of the world where it can actually grow with the right environment. Next on it is that it's got a natural UV protection. I think it was like a 10 or 15%, what do they call that? UV SPF. So that's kind of interesting. And it's 100% biodegradable. You leave this stuff alone. You leave my whole entire garden system alone. Aside from the automated irrigation plastic lines that I use, and and also if you're using a greenhouse, there will literally be nothing left underneath. It'll be a pile of some semi-rust and just some powdery substance that'll make up the jute plant. The jute plant absorbs carbon dioxide and releases oxygen faster than trees do. I think I heard it was something like a number was like 10 times faster. And I thought, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but it was definitely, but just look at this. It absorbs carbon dioxide faster and releases oxygen faster than trees. This stuff is amazing, guys. So it relies on rain, soft water instead of irrigation. And here's the kicker. It actually enhances the soil from which it grows. It actually leaves it better than the way it found it. So let's just look at this for a second. It doesn't need any pesticides. It doesn't need any fertilizers. Wherever you plant it, it leaves the ground better than the way it found it. It actually fertilizes the soil. You get to pick it and make rope or burlap sacks. Hands down, I think hemp, you better watch out. You got a runner-upper. This is some wonderful fucking shit, guys. So this is you can do this system on the ground, which I did, unfortunately, and I am going to say that I'm probably going to have to mousetrap a couple of mice and rats because they've annihilated all of my tomatoes. Last year growing this way in my experiment, I didn't get even one tomato. I got a few, that's right. But for the most part, they got everything. It's hard. It's on the ground. It's with nature. So we want to be in symbiosis with nature. We want to do things, with her. But when it comes time to eat, we need to eat, and that's the problem we have. That's why I've moved it from the ground up to hanging. So we've basically made hanging baskets. And this system right now, you guys can see in my videos again on Instagram, kind of looks like a horse stall. We've basically built a greenhouse, and we've taken all the soil and we've lifted it up and made these little hangers, like a clothes hanger, and we just basically hooked it into some galvanized pipes. And what we've done here is we've taken where usually you would have, say, a 3-foot by 10-foot garden. We've taken that 3-foot by 10-foot and condensed it into a 5-foot wide by 2 feet. 5 foot long by 2 feet wide. And that's how much space we're actually growing, in some cases triple the amount of space that you would just growing in ground. And as I said, it's in complete harmony with nature. We don't need to deal with rats anymore. We don't need to kill them. We don't need to kill slugs. We don't need to touch anybody. We just simply put these stuff, make like a jungle gym, basically, if I can explain it that way, and then we hang our baskets on the jungle gym. And one of the secrets that I found that I'm going to part with here is from beekeepers is they use axle grease around their hives. They basically lift their hives up on, say, a 4x4 post. That's the only thing touching the ground, and they line the whole bottom with axle grease, and that keeps the ants from coming in and getting all the sugars, invading the actual the beehive. It becomes a real problem depending on where you live. What I've done is experimented is moving from the axle grease and trying things such as petroleum jelly, using in particular Vicks Vape Rub. I don't know if I'm giving away too much, but I have to because I love you guys, and I want you guys gardening. Vicks Vapor Rub you can put on your body. It is petroleum based, but I think it's a lot better than axle grease. It smells a lot less, and I think it's probably a little more eco-friendly than axle grease. So yeah, we're hanging our systems. The answer was to get it off the ground. And if we're worried about airborne insects and birds and stuff like that, then we simply wrap it with the agricultural cloth, the pantyhose material. And then we don't have to worry about killing. Everybody go do your shit. Go handle your business, multiply, and go attack somebody else's garden. And go for it. So just like the jute plant, in my systems that, let's just call it a jungle gym, what we're doing is we're not utilizing the soil beneath, right? We're not doing anything. So why not fill that up full of about 8 inches to 10 inches of wood chips? And what's going to happen is all the residual water and the residual drips from that washes out like the tea that gets all the nutrients from the baskets from the plants. When those drips down to the ground, hits on top of the wood chips, sinks down to the ground below it, starts moisturizing that soil. And that soil is going to start working in biology with the mushrooms that are going to grow on the wood chips and all the fungus, the worms, and everybody came out. I already have proof of this. I was digging a post actually yesterday, and I dug some of the wood chips out of the way so I can get a post inside there, and the ground looks like chocolate already. It's only been about 6 months, but it's just dark, rich brown. It's got all this moisture, and there's tons of worms and fungus and stuff happening. So it's covered with those wood chips, and those wood chips are decomposing, creating more carbon and more stuff for the soil to just become yumminess. It's undisturbed. So basically what I'm saying here is this thing that I'm calling a soil tractor, just like the jute plant, we're leaving the earth better than the way we found it. It's getting all these moistures and nutrients dripping into it. And let's just say that we decided we're going to move the system to another area. Well, now you're saying you want to do in-ground gardening. I don't want to do your crazy stuff, Adrian. It sounds like a bunch of crazy shit. I want to go back to the old ways. Well, guess what? I call this thing a soil tractor, because when we move this greenhouse or this jungle gym, you have a perfect area to garden that hasn't been tilled. I'm going to give it, the magic number is about 3 years to where all the biology and things happen, where it starts softening up even the hardest soils. 3 to the max 5 years, you will have soil you can literally stick your arms down to your elbows in. So it's a soil tractor. And if everybody started doing this in their backyard, I think that we would have some wonderful soil biology. So it's very time saving. One of the things, there's lots of stuff. I can't even fit all of the things in here, but we're going to get into a very hardcore, we're going to get into the videos, and I think we'll do, once everything's finished, built, that's what we're doing right now. We're finishing the build, and we're getting everything going. We've got many, many experiments. We're going to go dive really deep. Right now, we're just kind of skimming, and like I said, giving you guys the actual significance of this stuff. And one of the significances off the top of my head right now I can look at is if you were injured, if you're handicapped, or you're getting old, or you just simply don't want to bend over anymore, you can design your garden to actually be level, like say to your waist and one up to your shoulders, where you can reach over comfortably and you don't have to bend over anymore. As I said with the weeds, there's not very many weeds in there. There's not much to do with watering if you automate it. Even if you did want to water with a can and turn this thing into 100% biodegradable gardening, you can just water with a galvanized can, and it's not going to take you that much time. Planting is not very hard. Literally, guys, I touch these things maybe, like the hardest part is probably about 6 minutes to pack a basket. I mentioned here, you got to line it with burlap, load it with your stuff, you poke a hole in it, you put a seed, you forget about it. The most time after that is literally probably 5 seconds, where you might have to pull 1 or 2 weeds out. The next time you're actually going to touch it is maybe doing some pruning here and there, another maybe 10 seconds. And your biggest next challenge is going to be harvesting. It's set it and forget it. That's pretty much where we're at with this. It's just beautiful. Time saving, as I said, for a community, or if you're doing stuff by yourself. I'm a single father. I own my own business. I have a special needs daughter. I'm all over the place. I got a lot I got to do. And this helps me to just do more in my life. And I'm eating some of the best food on the planet, if not the best food on the planet, full of nutrients. So it's these things I've designed too are basically 1 feet wide in either direction on the top. They're about 8 inches deep, which I stumbled by accident. The quantity of the space inside, the volume that these baskets hold, is exactly a 5-gallon bucket's worth. So that's how I found I filled up a 5-gallon bucket and I went to fill up my my 8-inch by 1-foot pots, or my baskets rather, and it came out perfectly level. Why is this significant? Because pretty much anything, almost anything, any annuals and perennials, not trees, of course, just some bushes, but just your regular vegetables, almost anything can be grown in a 5-gallon bucket. Now, will it come out great like the tomato, as I was saying earlier? I think not. A lot of heavy feeders, unless you're on ball on top of it and you're able to keep fertilizing them, keep giving them the nutrients they need. But pretty much you will grow even tomatoes in a 5-gallon bucket. You just may have to do more, much more of them than just a single bush. You might get like 50 to 70% less than you would, say, in a 10-gallon or growing in the ground. So it's a perfect size capacity. The ease of measuring the cubic feet and yards too, because of the square foot, because of the dimensions, makes it very easy. So if you wanted to order soils or something like that, the math is very, very simple. Also, the grid, we are using Mel Bartholomew's square foot gardening methods, where you can draw, say, a plus sign down the middle of this thing, and you can poke 4 holes in it. That means that you can grow 4 things that call for certain spacing. You can do 16, you can do 9, you could do 1. So it makes it very easy. Even a 7-year-old, like I said, if people don't know how to garden, that's one of my big things. Is I'm seeing on the forums that a lot of people are frustrated and they just quit, or they don't know where the first place to start. And it seems like it's a lot. And what we're trying to do is take all the guesswork out and simplify this thing, so that even, like I said, a 7-year-old would look at that and go, I can do that. And as I said, it's set it and forget it. If you tried to grow stuff and things died, you guys came to the right place, because, and even if you're pretty experienced, I think you're going to find some new stuff with this here. One thing I like about these baskets too, whether it's in ground or it's the hanging system, which I prefer on the jungle gym thing, is that it's got multiple configurations. Meaning that, like for instance, for me right now in my experiment, I'm growing a tomato bush, and in between, the next basket over is, say, spinach. The next basket over is another tomato bush. So what we have is these tomatoes growing up really tall, and they're growing up these strings that basically slide on a stringer on the rafters, so you can open up your garden like a curtain. You can move both your tomatoes to get to your spinach, which is in the center, which doesn't need much sunlight, especially in the summer if you're doing spinach microgreens. So they're actually shaded by the tomatoes, and you can kind of just move stuff around. Now let's just say that I'm growing those microgreen spinach and my tomatoes are right, on either side of it. Instead of having to dig up the soil, I can just simply take that basket out, and I can remix it and mineralize it, and then put some new seeds, and then put it right back without disturbing the tomatoes next to it. There's multiple configurations of things you could do. We're also stacking functions here, because within that shade of the tomato bush with, say, dappled sun is a microclimate, a microcosm in there. So you can kind of mess around with stuff and find stuff that need full sun, stuff that don't, and you can kind of move these around and experiment. And let's just say you had a diseased plant that could affect your other plants. Say you just want to get rid of it, you can simply just remove that and stick it maybe in a hospital, where you can keep an eye on it. And if once it starts looking like it's doing better, and you got the problem like, say, like powdery mildew or something, maybe you get it under control, you can bring it right back into your garden and let it be with its friends to do their thing, to have their party. Let's just say you're leaving something to go to seed, which I think is very important, because everybody's gardening these days and it seems like we have a seed shortage. Well, when plants go to seed, most things like, say, spinach, or even bigger is like kale, they get really large and they throw out this giant flower and they take up a lot of space. Well, what's nice is you don't even have to disturb the plant. You just basically unlatch it, unhook it, unhang it, or if it's in your garden and it's on the ground, you just merely pick it up, and you could take it to, like, say, a nursing area, a birthing home, where it can do its own thing. It's got its own water, and it continues doing what it's got to do. See, what's different about in-ground gardening is that once that would go to seed, it's going to get very large, and it's going to take up a huge space, and you can't really do much with that space. So you literally would have to pluck the bush out, or just sacrifice that space for another couple months. Whereas with my way, it's like Jenga. You can just keep moving stuff around. You can also interact. What I'm liking right now is you can introduce flowers and stuff. Again, like flowers, some of them don't last as long as vegetables and stuff, but you can get for your pollinators, like your bees and things like that. You could do such things as marigolds, which keep an eye out. Next week I am going to post something on the Instagram, the BC gardening guy, and we just added some marigolds to the square foot gardening on the basket gardening on the ground, and we've got bees coming in and butterflies and stuff, and it's just really neat. And it's for aesthetics, to make your garden look pretty. You can imagine the way my garden systems look is that when they're hanging there, and there's like 2 levels of it, or in some cases even 3, you have this cascading, like a waterfall of just greenery, and intermingled with that is flowers, so it just looks like a waterfall of green luscious plants and flowers and colors, and it's just awesome. I really think that I've come up with a new way to do microgreens with this hanging basket system. Again, 100% biodegradable. I have a problem with plastic. Me and plastic, we don't mesh very well, and I've been trying to at least eliminate it to just the irrigation, but not my food actually growing in the plastic. And I've got a lot of stuff you can check out on the Instagram BC Gardening Guy, where I've already done spinach, lettuce, we've done sunflowers, we did cilantro, we did peas, which I didn't know I liked. We did some beets, but they didn't come out too well, the beets there, because the seeds are like 5 years old, but we're going to be planting again. Right now, what I've got going on is that I'm doing the build, so I'm only limiting myself to 1 podcast per week, and I'm not really even posting much on Instagram. I haven't this week. Next week we will be putting a lot more, but we already have some stuff for you. We have the Facebook group too you can check out. It's San Diego BC Gardening. It's San Diego, the city where I live. B as in boy, C as in cat. Gardening. It's a private group, just ask to join, and you can check out what we got going on in there as well. So it's set it and forget it. Let's get into some cost. I think you guys might be interested in that. Right now, this is ridiculous because costs may vary around the world. I know we got some listeners in Germany and in Japan, China, and Australia, and all over. So as far as in America right now, in California, sunny side, southern California, right now I'm building these baskets out for about $1.40. That's per basket for a 5-gallon basket. The hanging hardware is roughly under $1. I'll just round it off and call it $1. And then the liner, this is buying in bulk too, by the way, guys. The liners, the burlap is ending up being 58 cents per insert. And again, that's buying bulk, and I cut my own. So relatively, I'm looking at somewhere around $1, so about $3, let's just say, give or take, to make a hanging basket that's got a liner in it. If you guys take a look at the root pouches, they last maybe about 3 years. I think for the cheap end, 5 gallons, you can get them for about $2.50 to $3. So I'm like right there with the cheapies. You can also buy the really good ones with the handles for about $3.50, and you're gonna get 3 growing seasons, they say, in it. I've heard from professional growers that the handles sometimes rot off, so don't rely on the handles. You pick it up and just your whole plant collapses on the kitchen floor or in your greenhouse. You always want to handle them from the bottom. But the problem I have is they're made out of shredded drinking water bottles and shredded plastic. You can take a listen of my I think it was episode 113, and I did put some links I think in there for you guys. But shredded plastic is not healthy, and it's not good, and it's not good for you, not good for the environment. So that's why, hence, we use the burlap. But in the long run, once you have your baskets built, which I'm predicting going to last well over a decade before they start to completely rust and fall apart, your insert only costs you, 60 cents? Let's just round it off from 58 cents to 60 cents. So every time you plant, it's 60 cents. So we've basically taken it down. I can't even do the math. I don't know. We've got the root pouches and the grow bags outperformed, and they're 100% biodegradable instead of semi-biodegradable. That's kind of what led me, is I kept looking for biodegradable root pouches, and I could not find anything. They're just not there. So yeah, that's some price on there. The other thing I make is soil staples, because on the top it's pretty cool. We cut out a 1 foot by 1 foot strip of burlap, and instead of throwing mulch to conserve moisture in the soil and to stop from seeds getting in there, is we put a layer of burlap on there, and we make these little staples that are about 4 inches long. We just simply bend galvanized wire, and we staple every corner so the wind doesn't blow these off. That's included in that price I said, 58 cents per basket. That's for a bottom, the sides, and also the cap on top. So it works with many different ways. I think the plants are happier. It helps retain the, if you use worm castings and stuff, you could pour it, basically mix it on your topsoil instead of it drying out. The drip irrigation, or when you irrigate it, it kind of keeps everything moist underneath that burlap, and it helps slowly feed your plants. So I use all, like, pretty much a third in Mel Bartholomew's mixture for soil, which is the Mel's mix, he calls it. It calls for 1 part coconut coir or peat moss, one of the two, whatever you do. So a third of that, a third of vermiculite, and also a third of compost. I'm getting my compost worm castings, which is costing me about $3 to say $3 to $3.50 per basket to make a 5-gallon container. That's a third of pure worm castings, and I think that my plants are just exploding. They're doing very, very well. If you might think that's expensive, I think it comes out to about $9 for a 5-gallon bucket full of worm castings. Buying it again in bulk, I get like 2 cubic yards, and but it's fantastic. If you go look at the bagged up stuff, which I can't even find anywhere, like just straight up like compost, seems like it's either chicken manure or cow manure. We're pretty much right up there. We're right there with it. And the thing that I like about the worm castings is it's done in the soil, so we're getting some of the biology from the soil, and sometimes even baby worms in there that don't get filtered out when they process the worm castings. So we got some biology in our soil, even though our baskets are hanging off the ground without contact from the soil. We still have some microbiology in there. And as I've learned in aquaponics, you'll see an aquaponics system start to turn like a light beige color. That's what you want. It's actually good. It's the bacteria that gets in the water, the good bacteria. A lot of you guys might not know there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. That we have it's just in the air. You can't get away from it. So I believe with the moisture and everything, we are getting a certain amount of biology, even though our plants aren't in contact with the earth, which may sound weird, but as I said, for the initial setup, like a soil tractor, thinking of it in these terms, you're actually bettering the soil for if you decide you do want to plant in the ground, but you're also leaving the rabbits and the squirrels and the bugs and everybody alone and letting them just do their thing. You don't have to poison them. You don't have to kill them. You can just let everything rest. So in contrast to what I would say on that is that we have so many people on this planet, and instead of growing these plants in the ground for now, if we can do it this way and let things rest, let things rehabilitate, I think that in the long run we're doing better. So it's a really good thing. So that's the show, guys. That's what I got for you guys. I am super, super stoked, super excited about building this thing out and about sharing this with the world and getting out there and just kind of showing you guys, look, that's what we practice and preach on this show, is doing stuff in a different way. What are our alternatives? I can't speak today. We got problems. Let's focus on some solutions. Things may look weird. Things may sound weird. Maybe it's something we've never done before. The way I look at it is, if it is weird and it's something that you've never seen done before, ask yourself this question: is what we're doing right now working? So just because something looks different and it's out of the norm, I think we should not be embarrassed. I think we shouldn't be scared of it. We should embrace it, because what we're doing now is pretty screwed up. The things we are doing are not working. We need alternatives to the daily grind. We need to figure this shit out. We need to repair ourselves. We need to repair our planet. We need to repair our community, our families, the animals and insects and everybody. And what better way than to start growing our food in a biodegradable way that's in harmony with nature. It may sound a little strange to you. Again, you don't have to hang them. You can put them on the ground, and you can still have all of the benefits that I speak of today. But I'm very excited, and I hope that it is my dream and my ambitions to contribute something to the world that I exist in, the world that I live in, that may leave a good flavor in the mouths of others, a good magical something. I basically want to help. It's something that's inside me that I'll never quit. That's why I love doing these shows. If I help anybody in any ways, I just want positivity. The foul mouth stuff is, I just feel like I want to address to people who are like punk rockers, who are, I don't know, they swear in movies. There's so much horrible stuff out there, and I'm hoping that I can sneak in and kind of speak the language that most people do, and show them that actually saving the earth and doing good stuff is actually a cool thing. And Maybe it needs to come out that way. Maybe that's the way we're going to reach people. I don't know. But either way, I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're good. And I hope this has helped you in any way. We do have a lot more coming soon. Almost done with this work. But if you want to check us out, guys, the Up and In It Show, it's on Facebook. Everything's Up and In It. There's a Facebook group. There's the YouTube videos. There's Spotify. There's TikTok. And also Instagram. We haven't gone on Twitter yet, but those are the platforms I usually post on. There'll be a heck of a lot more coming when I'm done working my ass off so hard. But as I always say, guys, go out there and have yourself a near-life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire. Human up. Live it, love it, own it. Bone it, my friends.